But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the World Blockchain Roundtable, episode 70, Cloud Mining Applications. Our hosts for today are me, Lisa Mighty Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. We've got Greg from Rivet, Distant. You guys
Hello.
see him on Den.Social. We may have Joe joining us later, the founder and architect of Dragon Chain, and hopefully Satoshi Sean will pop in a little bit later as well. How are you guys doing today?
Oh man, I am alive and breathing. I woke up, all those things happen. So
It's a good Thursday.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I just want to give everybody a quick update on the World Blockchain Roundtable layer ownership tokens or lot distribution from last week's episode. So it says this week, each host from last week will receive 222 lot. Each topic contributor from last week will receive 33 lot. Last week's theme on transitioning from number go up to blockchain go up was nominated by Jacob Wayne. Very smart guy. You guys should follow him on Den.Social. He will receive 33 lot. And these ownership tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, governance votes. This week's theme is cloud mining applications nominated by Lawn Nodes. Let's see.
Oh yeah, Lawn Nodes. I remember
Do you
that.
know
I
Lawn
remember that
Nodes?
character.
Okay.
Just from the internet.
Cool. The magical internet friends. Those are some of my favorite people. But first, my favorite thing, current events.
Current events.
Bum.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on.
The world is on
right
fire.
Right before this, we were talking about Veridal, we were talking about Japan, we were talking about Iran, I was looking at some stuff about Australia's telecom being hacked, 6 billion people's accounts that include phone numbers, names, addresses, passport numbers, stuff like that. So there's stuff going on in the world today. I don't know what you want to start with.
Dude, let's hear about that hacking thing. I'm very curious about this.
Yeah,
I heard about the hacking.
I'm still catching up on it a little bit. I guess it was recent enough that I didn't hear about it until I woke up this morning. But it's just another one of those examples of the dangers of centralization, in my opinion, because if you did not have a central database that was owned and operated by one single entity with whatever security practices they happen to, follow.
But yesterday, Jamie Dimon was saying how dangerous decentralization was and how.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, when he was speaking at Congress and he was
curious.
talking about how specifically his JP Diamond coin was, just so safe and how ledger technology and centralization was safe because Bitcoin, people have lost so many. And
I can't speak for JP Morgan specifically, but I can speak for, and this happened to me with Navy Federal Credit Union, which you would think is designed to look out for their veterans. But they took a lot of money from me because my transition from active duty didn't go so well and I needed time and they didn't want to give that to me. So they just took all my money instead, including my federally protected disability compensation that they were not allowed to take. Some of that I got back. I got some of that back, but not all of it. And eventually I just gave up. So no, I can tell you the banks are not your friends and they're not going to keep your shit safe.
But I'm, in defense of the poor guy, I'm sure that they still have to have some way to buy like the children's tears and baby seal oil that they use to lubricate the revolving doors they use to come in and out of the regulator.
The revolving doors. Yeah, they're
Right.
highly efficient in that. They know how to make really well operating revolving doors.
Right. They slide really smooth when you extract suffering from people and use it to make it work.
So,
which I mean, incidentally, is kind of apropos to the Japan thing, which I don't know if any of you guys have heard about yet.
No,
well, I kind of cut Dave off a little bit. I'm sorry. I was just seething with the whole centralization, decentralized thing. But
that's right.
Cut me off.
So
that's great.
Sorry.
Well, before we move on to it, though,
you were talking about the hacking thing. You were talking about the hacking thing, and I totally cut you off and took you down another path.
There's not a lot that I know about it yet. There'll be more in a post-mortem that comes out and stuff. But right now, all we know is that I think it was 6 million people's. This is a time of massive identity theft, and that's going to be sold, for a low price on the internet. You can call it the dark web or the undernet or the internet or whatever you want to call it. Really, it's just the internet. It's out there, and it's a black market trade. People's information. When you can specifically, whenever you have a centralized source of data that can tie names to numbers, numbers to addresses, addresses to passport numbers, in a way that lets you pretend to be a person fully. Because then you can fill out the whole form, right? Who are you? Oh, here. An example of that is like when I got my first top secret security clearance in the military, they gave me a package to verify. And I just went home with it to make sure this is you, make sure it's accurate, And so I went home and I'm going through it and it's not me. They gave me a different person with my same name.
Oh my God.
And it's their whole life. It's their whole family. It's where they were born. And I could have gone to any bank and said, I want to open a line of credit. Here's my actual ID because it's got me on it, my photo. And then I could just fill out that person, his information, and it would all just go on his record instead. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know if you ever watched The Net from 95. I just watched it again last night. But it's one of those type things where it's like, everything's on computers and online. And if you have access to it, you can really screw people's stuff up.
Well, there's a family that woke up in Seattle earlier this week with their bank accounts overdrawn over $999 million and 99 cents, or no, 22 cents. And the bank's like, something's wrong, And then there was another story last week where there was a girl that her bank allowed her to be overdrawn millions of dollars for a couple years. And then finally she got nervous and went home to Sri Lanka. And then they started coming after her. And so she was in court defending herself. And she's like, look, you let me be overdrawn for all these years. And so she just realized they let her be overdrawn without any penalty. So she started spending it and but buying cars and crazy things.
Right,
and
don't do that, by the way. They'll come back.
Yeah, don't do that. They will come back for it eventually. Yeah. But
and they'll give you an award for turning yourself in, like for having that happen.
But they did let her they did let her go though, because she didn't do anything wrong. They had a hard time recovering their property, but there was no punishment for her.
Right, because they knew they were going to be able to collect it.
Yeah, it was wild.
The bank error in your favor, like in Monopoly, right? Since we live in Monopoly money world.
Yeah.
The funny thing about that though is most bank contracts specify that if there's a bank error in your favor, that it's not actually in your favor, and they can claw it back and sue you to the full extent of the law.
Oh, okay.
Take your fillings. So definitely don't bank on the fact that they will be lenient. Don't.
I mean, life's not a game. Come on.
Because they will, and I, from personal experience, have had people come after me before because I literally thought somebody sent me more than they did back when I was in college. Money from home. Wow. Thought it was a nice gift from mom and dad to do a little bit of extra fun, and instead it was just bank error.
A bank error.
Yeah. This is back in my less responsible days. I just didn't answer the phone for 7 years and it went away.
That's, if that's your thing, like you can probably do that, but I don't imagine that being all that fun.
So what were you talking about? Speaking of bankers and the elite, you were talking about Japan. I was reading your tweet over here on the Twitter.
Before we jump into that, I think there's probably one thing worth mentioning. If anybody is even remotely considering using a vanity address project called just while we're on the topic of exploits, there's a vanity address project called what's it called? It was
Halborn?
Profanity, the profanity address generator hack. So basically this like a vanity address thing where you could have it generate an Ethereum address for you, such that you got some kind of word or name or series of numbers that you wanted in the sequence of the address. But the way that they did it was, inadvertently reduce the key space such that instead of impossible in the rest of the time in the universe to hack it with all the energy on Earth, you could do it in a month at great expense, right? And it turned out that was still profitable enough that a persistent attacker set to work cracking those addresses. So
that's something I got to look into.
Disappearing.
I've got some unused hash power. Maybe I can make some illicit money. No, I'm not recommending.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing to remember, when you're talking security, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, is like these people are persistent, right? Like you want to talk about persistent. It is people who do the economic calculation of what it takes to do an attack, figure out how much they can make if they pull it off, and then decide to take a calculated risk.
And if you can automate that, even better. It doesn't even take your time anymore. You spend, spend a little bit of time developing something that you can just run now, and then every now and then that thing you're running gives you money. It's mining.
Right. They literally just like
legal
pull off the entire first half of the imitation game, but in an algorithm, and you're hosed.
So does that mean, under that same under that same concept, that would mean that any vanity address, like an onion address, like for like the Tor network, Facebook has an onion address that begins with Facebook, the word Facebook. Right. You know what I mean? So
I would say just be wary of anything that manipulates a stock cryptographic security technique. Like you're talking about modifying the way that it generates keys, and somebody's forked some code, especially if it's not open source, but even if it is, like you potentially open up attacks. That's why I think police backdoors, for instance, are so dangerous. Because you might put its backdoor in there, and all you do is inadvertently narrow the key space for just the right kind of attack. And all it takes is once, and it's all gone. So just be careful. Warning there, guys. Yep. And I do have, if anybody's interested, maybe we can put it in the show notes, a really good example of another type of persistence these people exercise. But
send it to us.
There's this old
video
of 2016 or 2017, this conference where they dared a hacker to break into somebody's phone account on stage. They did it in 2.5 minutes, and they did stuff like play a YouTube video in the background of a crying baby while they said their husband just left and they need to get into this account and please help me. And
there's a lot of
real fast. It was phone rap.
There's a lot of talks like that you can find just on YouTube and stuff, or if you go to DEF CON's website and look at their media vault from some of their talks, you can see the old talks where, I saw somebody crack a safe on stage with an open source 3D printable auto dialer, basically. Here's this thing and do. And it wasn't very long, and it opened the safe. There's been people that got arrested as they left the stage because they demonstrated a vulnerability that nobody wanted to address. So they were like, all right, nobody wants to address it, so I'm going to demonstrate it, and then I'll go to jail, and then the company has to fix it. There's some interesting.
You get to watch me famous on stage too. I mean, honestly, if I could get arrested at the end of one of these episodes, that'd be so great.
So now can we talk about Japan?
Drive decentralization. Yeah.
By the way, last thing with that, you said there's two things. If you get the time, Greg, that would be good for the cryptocurrency layer as an announcement or as a warning or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep, it's on my agenda.
Cool.
I've been trying to spread it around. I literally just retweeted it yesterday when Austin shared it with me. So I'll share it out there.
Cool.
I guess shifting gears back to the Japan thing, this is really interesting thing. I mean, interesting enough that I would say you can expect to distract from this, if need be, some weird stuff to get escalated by the propaganda machine. Like there's going to be some weird culture war event that gets thrown out there today just to keep people's eyes off this. Because
is this basically Japan pumping their own coin? Basically,
think about it like this. So you know how we had the Fed meeting yesterday, and they raised rates by 100 basis points.
I thought it was 75.
75.
Or they did 75. They thought they were going to do 100, but instead they did 75, and also made a nasty looking graph and said some mean things, and it was as good as 100.
Right.
Well, the same meeting happened in Japan today. At their version of that, the Bank of Japan did the same meeting, right? And their response was, no, dovish. We maintain our negative 0.1% with yield curve control, loose monetary policy, and it sent the yen just like the dollar yen pair on the FX, the forex trade. Just
was that a downward or an upward? What did you just do?
Well, I mean, the dollar became more valuable relative to the yen at a massive rate. Like it was something to the tune of 145 to 1 or something like that, which was apparently too much for their government. Because imagine this: imagine you're sitting here in the United States, and we'll just places because it's the best way to explain it. Imagine you hear the Fed come out and they give dovish policy, and all of a sudden the dollar plummets. People are panicking. They're trying to buy as much toilet paper as they can. People are strapping life jackets to their backs in 2s and 3s. The whole thing. Then the next, sort of the next evening, or that evening rather, Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, comes out and says, "Actually, no. You know what? We're not going to let this slide. We're going to sell all these yen-denominated securities to get yen, and then we're going to dump yen for dollars." Right after the Fed said we're not going to tighten. Right. They dumped dollars in Japan. Dumped dollars hard. They sold
dollars for
denominated securities, and they dumped those dollars onto the forex. This is the Treasury, their government version of the Treasury, overriding their own Federal Reserve equivalence policy the same day, the night before.
So they're publicly fighting.
They came out and literally reversed course on the only policy lever they had to pull over their own central bank on the night before a bank holiday in Japan. Like, I mean, I don't know if you guys know much about Japan, but there's a certain culture of respect and polite cooperation that if you knew the kind of insult that this was in the context of being, of the culture over there, like, this was a hard slap to the face in public.
So it's even harder because it was in Japan, is what you're saying.
Right.
I have heard some things about that from like military buddies that used to live over there, and things that I've read about how, honor is a real thing, and they even have laws against slander, even if it's true. You're not supposed to say bad shit about somebody, even if it's true. That kind of thing. So I would imagine that kind of a high profile.
Right. You mildly act rude if you don't apologize, if you don't, go over there as a foreigner and know how to use the fact that you put your payment in the cup or in the tray instead of hand it directly to the cashier. Like, that's an insult that you should apologize for.
So what are the implications of that?
If they dumped the US dollars, did those US dollars come back to the US?
Now, those US dollars went on to the Forex, and they went to whoever was offering trading pairs in yen, right? So the market,
but they're being dumped back into the market.
They have something worth or they had before this, something like $1 trillion worth of US dollars that they could just hang on to over there in the Treasury Department in Japan. And they didn't tell us how much they dumped. Like, they dumped it stealth and then announced that they did something. And then bank holiday. And that's today.
Okay.
So they basically made their own reserve bank people come to work to deal with this. I'm sure that the Treasury Department in the U.S. is just yelling over the phone, like Yellen. And there's chaos abroad.
And throw more U.S. dollars into the market, then the U.S. dollar goes down.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Like, de-dollarize.
If Japan will do that, being as IM for IM says, at being a very honorable and humble and peaceful society. If Japan does that, is that going to happen elsewhere? I don't know.
These guys are also some of our biggest allies, right? Like Japan and the United States go together like, peanut butter and jelly, peas and carrots, so to speak, right? The fact that they did this is going to embolden anybody.
But when somebody's drowning, they will stand on top of you to save themselves.
Right. This to me is, sort of gold, goats, and guns, 8-player Go game happening right here. And they just closed off a territory and just shut us out. And I don't think that the implications are going to be known for a while, but I think this is big.
Wow.
If we're looking for the global monetary system to crumble, I think this might be historically where people come back and say, this is where we noticed it first.
Yeah, I guess a lot of things are that way, right? Where maybe you notice something that happened, but you don't know what it means until later on when you have a few more pieces to put together, you can go back and reconstruct and say, okay, actually, it's kind of like the, what is it, the 22nd today. So in just a week, the Vatican will have reached their deadline for recalling their liquidity back to the Vatican, right? I'm wondering if it's going to be another thing where you look back and you say, all right, this event, all had to do with this global collapse of the, banking industry or something, whatever it ends up being,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and this isn't the only signal we got. Like they actually signaled that they were testing the Forex rates like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, but nobody thought they were going to actually do this.
Was it the German leader that came out and said everyone will know where they are on the 24th of September?
Oh, there's a lot of interesting. So how here's what I think is like every now and then this comes around. There's even been another, like in 2000 something, there was a September 23rd, 24th. If you can look up on YouTube, videos are still up from like 2017 or something, where it was like, this is the year where September 23rd or September 24th is going to be the end of everything. And
Rosh Hashanah is Sunday, the 25th. The Queen's birthday is the 26th.
There's a lot of stuff that culminates at the end of September.
The thing that tipped me off to this too was like right around 3 a.m, which is like close of business Japan. 3 a.m. Central Time is like close of business roughly Japan. There was a brief spike in the price of all of the crypto assets that are down.
Oh, okay.
And to me, that suggested, okay, what's DXY doing? So of course, it's 3 a.m. I have a phone. What am I going to do? Get good sleep? Or am I going to look up the DXY and see what it's doing? There was no signal in there, so I really got curious, and that's how I sort of stumbled across this. But if you don't look at it closely, like you might think that this was their Federal Reserve doing that, which would have been a little less weird. But actually, it was their Federal Reserve equivalent getting overridden by their Treasury equivalent.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. Yeah.
So anyway, keep an eye on that, guys. I don't know what it means as far as what's going to happen, but shit's going to get weird.
Well, here in the U.S., the mints are all being replaced by HR directors. So the leadership is changing at all the mints. Big Square's been covering it. So like this Ventress Gibson is over. Is she over the Treasury? No, Janet Yellen's over the Treasury. But Ventress Gibson, I think, is over the mint. And then he's been watching. So the Perth Mint in Australia just moved a woman that is former HR director, they're all C-suite HR people.
Oh, no.
So Australia just moved somebody in that's a HR director or HR C-suite level person. There was another mint. He listed multiple mints around the world that are moving in these HR directors or HR C-suite people.
That's crazy.
So is this like people that are good at managing people with outrage and
when do you bring in HR? When you're shutting down the company.
Protect the powerful in your company from the people who have no power in your company. That's what you.
Or you're shutting down a company.
At least you do if you work in a cynical space,
Yeah.
The government bureaucracies, for example.
That's very interesting.
That would be
and
wild.
There's a huge I had Andy Scheckman on my show not this past Tuesday, but the Tuesday before. And he has, excuse me, excuse me. He has a company called Miles Franklin Mint. His company that he and his father started, they're one of the 27 companies that are allowed to mint with the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury. And there is silver or precious metal, silver specifically, missing on the balance sheets, like the 1,000-ounce bars out of the Treasury. Then they go to like this COMEX balance sheet or something, and then they go to like these mints. Well, there's thousands and thousands of ounces missing that aren't showing up on the balance sheets. And meanwhile, he just had a client order 50 million ounces of silver, and the Treasury couldn't supply it. Of silver eagles, and that is required in the Constitution that to be available by demand.
Right.
And so actually there's a Congressman Mooney, I think it's Mark Mooney, who is holding them to task on it. But it's just, and it's like, well, where is this missing silver then? And why aren't you providing these silver eagles that you are held, by law, by the Constitution, supposed to provide at by demand?
I'm sure they're trying to blame supply chain breakdowns due to the fact that they shut down the supply chains.
That's interesting to hear. My wife and I watched part of a, I want to say it was a Netflix documentary, but it was about Peruvian gold. It was about South American gold and that whole trade. And the culmination of the documentary was that that's in the Treasury. That's where it went. It's in the U.S. Treasury.
Right.
Or it's in
it's just like the Afghani gold, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, different story altogether.
Different story, but kind of the same effect.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting when you start looking down, when you start drilling into, if you look more fundamentally at the base of currency, which is something that I never did until Bitcoin. To be honest with you, that's one of the things that stemmed my interest in macroeconomics and what is money and what does it mean to exchange value and what is value to begin with, and all of those questions. I never gave a shit about any of that, which I think most people are that way, because if the system's just kind of working and you got dollars and
you're steered away from questioning that kind of thing, right? Like if you want to get philosophical, they want to steer you towards Chi. They don't want to.
Yeah, you start looking under the hood though. You start like
they want to steer you towards Mises.
Well, my husband had an Uber driver yesterday that he went to go pick up one of our cars that we had something done on it, and she's talking to him about something in the crazy world we're in right now, and and she's like, yeah, what is going on and whatever, and she's like, I mean, our dollar's backed by gold. What's going on? And he goes, honey, our dollar hadn't been backed by gold since 1971. And she drove off the side of the road. Yeah. And he was like, he goes, I mean, here's this, intelligent lady that we're having this conversation. He goes, I promise she went home and looked it up, and she probably is just like mind blown because just her whole world was wrecked but they don't teach that stuff in school. They don't teach you about value and what is money and why.
Honestly,
money.
They haven't in a long time. I learned about economics, and I learned about that from my grandfather actually growing up watching westerns, right? Watching old westerns, and people would come into town with like a quarter. You know what I mean? It'd be set, it'd be good to go. Or $1, and people are like, oh my gosh, a whole $1. Anything you want, sir. You can live here all month. It's fine.
Right. Like that scene from A Million Ways to Die in the West, right? Like we're like, take your hat off, son. That's $1 bill.
Yeah, right. And so I'd ask my papa, like, Papa, what's up with that? Basically, and he'd be like, well, let me tell you, it used to be worth something, and now it's, and then the whole thing about introducing paper dollars too, and the how that had to be forced down people's throats because it's fine, it represents gold that it's backed by, so you can always exchange it, and that's how they lead you into this less and less
Right. I mean,
hard
even before that, the sovereigns of the past, right? Like they would totally also debase their currencies, even when they had silver and gold coins, right? There is
They
a
take the
history,
notch.
a long
Yeah.
history, where they would literally shave the coins to make
Right.
more coins, such that when you were trading them, you didn't realize you were trading something that was slightly less weight, so that they can make another one of equivalent slightly less weight, right?
I learned about that from like with Rome too, later on in life, about how they would, over time, they diluted the precious metals that their coins were made of. Now it's an alloy. Oh, now it has
a copper blank in the middle of it until they
Yeah.
change to an iron blank.
that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's weird because when you learn about that kind of thing, you look at what's going on today and you're like, oh shit, this is an analogy of that. As if doing it digitally isn't the same damn thing.
Well, and the crazy thing about it is it's actually more secure, right? It's a lot harder to shave a Bitcoin or to shave an Ethereum, right? Because cryptography isn't something that's amenable to that kind of metaphor, right? That's not really what's going on when people interact with a ledger. They're signing a cryptographic right to interact with a particular account address. And that's just not something like the coin metaphor is useful. That's not really what's happening. We're sending database rights. They just have to be cryptographically signed before you can execute them. And it keeps a balance so that if you take some from here, it has to go over there, and you can't sign another transaction at the same time that says, well, actually, I'd like to double spend that. Like literally what Bitcoin.
You don't have to bite it to see if it's soft enough to be real. Is somebody giving me fake Bitcoin here? You don't have to worry about that. That kind of thing.
And there's still like scams that sort of look like that. The most akin thing I think is probably folks who scam you out of it by pretending to be Vitalik Buterin giving away 50,000 ETH or whatever. Right? I still see the same scams from like a year ago or 2 years ago. I still see the same video of it's Elon Musk, Jack Dorsey, and like one or two other people. And Jack's got his tie-dye shirt on and his beard thing, and Musk looks a little bit different. And it's like the same scams running the same videos with a different scam, but it's like the same videos being rehashed, saying, oh, they said this, and it's buy that. And
speaking of scams, the IRS, they have a Judicial Watch unsealed some testimonies of former Obama IRS officials detailing their knowledge of Tea Party targeting.
Oh, right. What was that called? It was called Operation Choke Point.
I heard about that back at the time, but I hadn't seen anything like official about it really. So that'll be interesting to read through.
It's pretty exciting. Yeah, that was pretty exciting. Cool. And then I was trying to scroll through and find, here it is. This is epic. Okay, hold on. We've got to let everybody watch this. Hold on.
Cool.
Okay.
This is just the most ridiculous thing I've seen on. Here's Jamie Dimon. Yes. John Deaton tweeted this out. Amanda, I don't know if you can play that.
I'll pull it up in the meantime.
Or can you do that? Okay. I don't know how that works.
Here.
I'm in suspense.
I think Backstage has got it. Yeah.
Oh
God, I hate that guy. Learn to use a cell phone.
I'm not sure if we're going to get the audio, Lisa.
Oh no. Okay. So it's him saying that his about how safe, so he's talking about how dangerous Bitcoin is because they are decentralized Ponzi schemes. And so many people have lost, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and then it goes on to talk about how safe the Jamie Dimon coin is, and
safe while he diversifies and inclusively enables his company to facilitate the sale of funds that we ship to places that kill themselves with them. Like, neat, Jamie. Sorry, buddy, but you have blood on your hands.
Well, and that they what is it called when they print them? They lend the dollar out 10 times or whatever. Every dollar you put in the bank, they
fractional reserve.
Fractional reserve lending, yes. So if you guys haven't seen this clip, go watch it. Will make your head spin.
I've got it pulled up and saved for later. I sure will.
Yep,
yeah,
I'm on that one.
It's epic. Just the biggest scam. But they're really pushing these centralized CBDCs all over the world. I mean, that's where, and they're trying to scare everybody into, we're here from the government and we're here to help, kind of thing.
Well, the great thing about it though is, do you guys notice the kind of quiet desperation, the fear that you can see in their eyes? They're starting to realize that they were too late to stop this.
Do you think something that each of you said could maybe be related? Somebody in chat said that with CBDCs, you don't need the mints anymore. So is that why HR is being moved into the mints to shut them down? You think that's related?
I mean, that's what you do when you're closing a business, is you bring in HR and give everybody their package.
For all we know, they could have also just like shipped, by accident, even though they knew at some bureaucratic level, like irradiated metal to all the mints and all the workers were poisoned. Like that could be the sort of thing that's going on too. Like you never know. Ineptitude has many faces.
All right, there could be a massive lawsuit coming, so they're prepping for that. You don't know what it is. Yeah.
I mean, that could be where the
curious
is too.
Oh, it's true.
They could be getting ready to roll out the new, because they retooled all the mints last summer. And they put this little notch in some of the coins that supposedly is a security thing. But then Bix was saying, like, that doesn't make any sense that you would put a smooth spot as a security thing unless you were going to have like something inside the coin, and that was going to be the spot where it was red.
Or has anybody taken like a scanning electron microscope to that spot?
They have
a really, really tiny QR code. Who knows?
They have, and there's nothing inside the coin. There's nothing. What was the other thing they looked at? Somebody else looked. I think Andy's crew looked like inside the coin and tried to figure out what was going on with it. I don't know. There's too many weird things happening with all of that. But
there is out there.
It could be like trying to make us look somewhere else.
This has nothing to do with what you're talking about, but there is a coin out there in circulation among the world that has a little SD card in it. Because I used to have a nickel that I bought. This guy and his son made him had a website, and they made him in the garage. And they would take two nickels and they would make one nickel out of it, but it had a void in the middle. And he had a special ring, and you put the nickel in there and you slam it on the table and it opens it up. And you could fit a little micro SD card in there. And I thought I was clever. I'm like, oh yeah, because it was a cool little spy toy. And then I spent it one day on accident. I'm like, shit. So out there somewhere, there's a nickel with an SD card in it.
Man, you could have loaded that thing up with like illegal weapons research, or like
gigabytes,
boatloads and boatloads of like dog on donkey on guy porn, and
there was nothing on it. It was just one of those things that, like, I don't know, I went through like a phase with like cool spy gadgets. I had a wristwatch with a thumb drive in it. I had a coin just in case I wanted to, whatever.
A coin with an SD card. I don't think like that. I would not be a good bad guy. Like when you guys were talking earlier about the hackers, like they'll sit and think about how they can do, how much hash rate it would take to steal whatever.
Trade-off. Yeah. Speaking of hash rate,
when you build something like we should probably get the topics eventually, but when one last little thing, like when you get to the point where you're dealing with security as a company like Rivet, or like I no doubt Dragon Chain deals with this kind of thing. Well, you have to sort of war game out all of the ways you could possibly be attacked if you want to really be secure. So we'll occasionally get off on a tangent about maybe this is possible, and instead of saying, oh, we're wasting time, which would normally be true of any conversation like that in any other job, right? You actually follow it through and you go, well, okay, so if that worked, what can we do to stop it from working? And then we think about whether or not we build that, right? So you sort of get in the habit of thinking about the world like that.
That's I was forced into that habit. We spent most of our time doing that in the Navy. as contingency plans and running scenarios and what if this happens and what if that happens. That way, if anything happened, there was a plan for that kind of thing.
Yep. And then I promise this is the last thing, but I just had to share this screen real fast because I want people to realize that I was joking seemingly. Check this out. This is possible. This is possible. This actually exists. Look at this.
What are you
How
showing?
nanotech can flow. Look at that. See that little guy right there? That is an RFID tracker.
Ah.
Yeah.
Hold on, just looking at the size of my finger for a second. That's not very big.
Right. That's like 5 notches on however big that person's fingertip rolls are.
So that'll register if you walk through a doorway or something.
Yep.
Where
Anything
basically
you can send a radio signal.
the reader has to be
back.
relatively within a few feet of wherever you are. So you walk through a door, you walk into a department store, anything that has something sort of next to you, a person who has a reader in their purse, that kind of thing.
So I had seen, and I can't remember what country it was, but there were some people were letting their business or their jobs put chips in them so that they could go to work easier and scan in for work and
Right.
Well,
it helped them monitor their
I have seen the
imagine.
Usually right here, there's there's enough space right here where you can put in a little
I don't care
implant.
how much space. I have lots of space, but you're not putting a chip in my body for work or anything else.
Because the key card's too inconvenient, right? You can lose a key
chip
card.
in my body. I'm installing it myself.
That is insane to me.
I have seen that though. And then you can just put your hand on something and it reads the RFID.
Yeah.
A car, you can do that with when you open the handle, it's you're right there. So
that's a commitment.
Kind of thing.
Or if you're highly unlucky, you could end up.
I
with
love
the
my
wrong
husband, but my
signal
ring
and
comes
it sets off the burglar alarm in a grocery store. I can't go through.
That's insane to me.
It's interesting, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
It's spooky.
It's spooky. It's very spooky and insane. I cannot sign into my Den.Social for some reason. I'm going to try a different browser. Maybe it's because I've got some shield up or something. I don't know.
Well, we're not censoring you. I can tell you that.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I love my Den.Social.
We don't do that.
Unknown failure. Please try again.
Oh yeah. What are you trying to share? I could maybe bring it up.
No, I was just trying to sign in so I could read the questions and stuff. So somebody will have to take over.
Okay, that's fine.
As the master of ceremony.
I'll go ahead and I'll bring that up, or maybe actually we have
a short film.
We have that actually ready for us.
Oh yeah, we do. We have a short film. Maybe I can find it during the short film.
That's all right. We're going to have it brought up. We have our stagehands that are going to drive that for you, so you don't have to do that.
Oh, okay, cool.
So good to go.
Okay, all the problems solved in the world. I have one more announcement before our quick little film. I'm honored to be part of the Veritasium DAO, and we made a decision to jump in and make an effort to file a amicus curiae. I'm not saying it right.
Well,
I did close. It was close.
Well done.
Curiae, amicus curiae, and pretty excited. We, we all donate our time to really fight for the token holders and all the work that goes on there. And the community got behind us, and we reached our goal of for what we needed to get started with the attorney group, and then now we have our legal fund started. So we're super, super grateful and wanted to say thank you to everyone. And this is really going to support token holders in secondary markets. And we really want to be a friend to the court. This is something that we believe the court, we have a story to tell and some information the court really should hear. So we're excited to introduce that to the court in the SEC versus Ripple case.
And thank you for that effort too.
Yeah.
Wherever
people do,
we're really
what are you guys going to do with the?
We're hoping that other projects that the SEC has harmed their token holders in secondary markets will also consider doing the same thing. I think it would be a smart move. And in fact, the judge said the same thing last night.
Really?
She accepted the amicus curiae of the digital commerce last night in the case, and basically made that a similar statement. So that's public knowledge now.
That's fantastic.
So
Well, it's good to see the community doing something to fight this, because right now is the time, right? We got to avoid precedents being set that change things for the worse. And maybe it's wrong, but if we don't stand up, who will? So
Here it is. Yeah, Judge Torres approves Chamber of Digital Commerce's request to file an amicus brief in Ripple versus SEC lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, more of that would be fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, people being able to have their say instead of just being at the whims of the ruling class, if you will.
Yep. Well, as I understand it, they have such a bad case that the price of Ripple is starting to pump.
Wouldn't surprise me. Nothing surprises me anymore.
Like something between the lines on what the lawyer for Ripple was saying, and it was something that he sort of hinted at by accident. So like they weren't trying to craft the response or anything, but
you see, you started something over in chat. A lot of people can't log into Den right now. We'll have to check that out.
Huh, that's weird. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I just logged out and logged back in, but I'll try it, and I'll try it later. Outside of this, I'll give it a shot afterwards and see what's up.
Cool.
Well, all right. Let's we can talk about some cloud mining.
Cool.
Well, we've got a little something for everyone first, and then I'd love to jump into some cloud mining. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me.
Well, that was appropriate timing.
I love that quote, actually. It's one of my favorites.
That's some America right there.
That's like that
about history, I think earlier.
Motivates a lot of
We've seen things that are, it's not just theoretical anymore, it's how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the thing we were talking about with like Rome, or the history of debasing currency or inflation or whatever.
Well, and that's what they're doing in Iran right now. I mean, they took that girl's life, and the women and the people in general are just saying enough.
Yeah, there's an anonymous post over in the conspiracy theories layer on Den.Social right now talking about that.
Oh wow,
interesting. I'll
just plugged in when I have the opportunity. All right.
We're having a meeting tomorrow about starting my lair in Den. Dave, you remember that,
yes.
right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I was thinking about it yesterday that we hadn't actually set a time. So we'll do that after the show today. Let's set a time.
Yeah, but I'm excited about that. So it'll be fun. So today, let's see. Today's topic is cloud mining. So you guys, this will be right up your alley. Let's see. Where do I start with this? Cloud mining, see Thursday passport. Cloud mining right there. Passport in world. Passport gang. Cloud mining, could cloud mining be a good way to get more users in a decentralized social like Den.Social? What do you guys think?
Interesting question. Interesting because, and maybe we should quickly define cloud mining. To me, cloud mining is like AWS, because you don't want to run your own server at home. So you rent out someone's server, you just rent out one of Amazon's servers or whatever, right? In the same way, there's a lot of companies that offer mining as a service kind of thing with their cloud infrastructure, where they have a bunch of computers or they have a bunch of mining rigs that you can then create an account and either purchase hash power that you then apply to whatever cryptocurrency you want to apply it to, or some version of that. Sometimes you bring your own gear and they co-locate. Same thing with like data centers. You can co-locate your own hardware if you want in their server, and then they are just responsible for maintaining it. And people do this for a lot of reasons. There's not a lot of upfront costs to it, so you can get started without having to have this big seed fund. Or maybe the power is really expensive where you live. Like I pay
that's interesting.
about 13 cents per kilowatt hour where I live, which is a little bit more than is like, it's not profitable for me right now, the way everything is, you know? So any mining, any proof of work mining that I do from home is going to be with speculation that in the future, this is going to be a bigger thing and stuff like that. So cloud mining lets people not have to do that, but still contribute and get involved. And arguably it's less centralized than the data center itself being all one company and running all their own stuff. So that's kind of my understanding of cloud mining.
Well, and Dave, I think you hit on something interesting there too, like the ability to move around to hit rates. Like that's also kind of cool when you think about grid capacity, which is like an emerging issue in modern times as sort of like we clown world away all of the reliable power. Grids are becoming less reliable, so like being able to move to reliable grid spots, to sort of consume capacity where there's extra, that's a pretty powerful thought too when you think about it. And if you're trying to save, like if you are trying to save the earth by reducing carbon, agree with it or not, right? There are people, and I know there's probably people in the chat that agree with it, probably some that don't, because it's a contentious issue. But if
there's a lot of
people that achieve that with cloud mining.
There's a lot of people that today, for some reason, it's more common to, or maybe this is just my bubble that I'm in. I don't know. It frustrates me though that it seems like there's a ton of people out there who let perfection get in the way of progress, where they don't want to do anything that's objectively better than what we're doing today because it is not absolutely perfect and fit within their vision of what the future should be like. Like they just want to skip
often selective. That's often selective.
Yeah. I want to say also
be wary of selective demands for specificity or perfection. They tend to be motivated by something else.
I wanted to argue in Modeth brings up a cache or a cache. I wanted to say also, so what I was talking about a minute ago was proof of work, cloud mining. We've discussed in the past, or I've gone on at length about, the concept of mining and what is mining, because more that I've been involved, and I've been mining since just a few years after I discovered Bitcoin. So that would be back like 2013, I guess. I was mining Litecoin and Feather and Darkcoin, which became Dash and stuff like that. And so the longer I pay attention to mining and cryptocurrency and stuff like that, the more I broaden my perspective of like what mining is, right? And today I do a lot of like service nodes. I run an Oxen service node to support the LokiNet network and session private browser, which India could really use right now, for example. I'm not sorry, India, sure, but I meant to say Iran, the other I over there. And because they're shutting off the internet and like tracking people and killing them.
In a way to try to control the riots, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
If you shut off the means of communication, it's more difficult for protests to organize. It's kind of the
you would think by now they would realize that they're not going to succeed at that, so they shouldn't bother.
Well, you would think, but anyway. So service nodes, right? To me, that's mining, right? You're running a service, you're providing a service to the network, you're being held accountable and cryptographically ensuring that you're providing fair services and you're getting rewarded for that. It's a different kind of mining, but it's mining. Yeah. And Den.Social was in the question, can this cloud mining help? I don't know if the question was to onboard or to, can you bring the question back up for a second? What was it to
get people
more users? On
right?
Den.Social, yeah. So Den.Social itself, I would even consider a form of mining because you're operating in a consensus mechanism that rewards people for objectively measured inputs.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a form of mining as well.
I would take it a little step
Oh,
further.
you can stretch that out as long as you want. Like mining,
think about this.
The concept of mining, is going to work and getting paid. Maybe, I don't know.
Think about this: traditional mining, right? Like traditional Bitcoin mining. Like, what if you wanted to run a miner? You wanted to create a mining pool, and you wanted to organize it so that everybody who helped pay for the hardware and the electricity had a voice. You might use something like Den governance, right?
Yes, exactly.
And maybe that would be really awesome for people who could only afford a few Satoshis to get in, right? Like, everybody could have a voice and everybody could have a stake.
And thanks for helping me get there, because I sometimes take too long to get to the end point that I was trying to say. And that I was going to say there is a mining layer that it probably was a number of reasons that this got sort of paused, but there was some initial discussion in the mining layer on Den about exactly that. Hey, we have a DAO, each layer is its own DAO. So that mining layer is a DAO. So that DAO could have a multi-sig
right. Let's
account.
First vote on who's going to be the multi-sig signers.
And then that treasury, and that treasury could be used to acquire equipment, to pay for a subscription to a particular amount of hash power, however much hash power you can afford, right? Based on whatever. So that can be designed and organized on Den. And yep.
Right. Or you can even have it do a thing like a matter burn, where it buys matter from your pool. Yeah,
you could structure it any way you wanted to, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I think it could help, like especially if there's like anybody who wants to start or get involved with a few people, and you want to like organize those few people and say, hey, let's do this and let's account for it. And let's make sure that all the decisions are above board and accounted for in a DAO governance decision that we can prove and all that stuff, so that later on there's no fuckery, about who did what and how it was supposed to be and all that. You could definitely come to Den and you could join the mining layer, or you could open your own, cloud mining Florida DAO or something like that, whatever your local community is, or however you wanted to do it. And you could use Den as a way to do that. And in the process of doing that, you're also earning rewards for your contribution as a community member on Den. So if you're going to be doing the work of organizing anyway, why not do it in a way that everything's validated and verified, first of all, and proven. Den proves everything that happens, every post, every reply, in each layer has a chat room. All the chats are on chain, and it's proven to Bitcoin, literally to Bitcoin, right? And Ethereum as well. And so like nobody can go back and say like, oh no, like I'm not going to go in the database and change something and then lie about it and then be allowed to get away with that, to say, oh no, you said this back in the past. If you go look, like Reddit's done that before, where they change something that somebody said and then use that as evidence to like get them banned or something. You know what I mean? We can't get away with that shit on Den, which is great. It's fantastic. So yeah,
especially when you deal with like the money that a successful mining pool that you set up could bring in. Like you've got a cloud mining party that gets real big, and you guys start making some serious bank at it. You're going to want something like a DAO that coordinates how it's governed, so that you've made all those choices as a group and everybody knows it's fair up front. The only other way today existed in the world of contract, right? Where you'd have to go get a lawyer and draft one up, and everybody had to have their own lawyer, and then you'd sign it, and it just got too expensive.
It's inefficient. Today we live our lives, whether we realize it or not, whether somebody cares about blockchain or not, we live our lives in a more decentralized fashion than ever before. Like I've never met any of you, but we talk all the time. We collaborate and we do things together, and we live our lives decentralized. We don't have a meeting room that we get into anymore. So it makes sense to apply decentralized tech to that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I know all you guys, even though we've never met in person.
Joe made it. Thanks for joining us, sir.
My magic internet friends, and there's another one. Welcome, Joe.
Hello. Sorry, I was out there.
No, you're good.
I was watching in the background.
That I wanted to maybe Joe. if you were going to create some kind of new kind of mining, where like the electricity you spent to mine was generated by something like, like here's a dumb first example. I put a piezoelectric generator in my shoe, and I create a miner, and I call it proof of walk. What would you do?
You'd have to solve the problem of, how do you avoid, or how do you track the actual source, right?
Right.
And is it a matter of reputation, which can help, or is it a matter of, the signal themselves, the signal itself being, it's obvious you're only applying this tiny bit over, which it would cost you more in the long run to do if you were cheating, than to do, if it was power based, right? If it's something else, I mean,
I was going to say, I heard somebody talking the other day about doing a thing where they were, and I don't know that it was mining, but they were going to be, I get maybe it was more like a proof of stake thing, but they were going to be rewarding people for sleeping.
Oh, cool.
Is that even possible?
Oh, sure would be.
Yeah, you can have evidence how you set up the economy. Yeah, you can do anything, but like say, I don't want to give anything away. We are working with one group that's doing something very interesting, but it's more focused on identity, and proving who this was that did this thing, right? So,
right.
And if it's a measurable thing, even if it's not an absolute black white, it's like, well, we can see that, over time, we're pretty sure this is this person. And as they keep doing things, that keeps going.
That was one of the most interesting conversations that we had for me on the show, was when you started talking about the old key signing parties back in the day, and how this, the reputation and proving who someone was is possible in this digital way, because we do have this identity crisis, and
it's fantastic.
And the risk of, people having their identity stolen and all these different things. And so the way to be able to prove it, and also through that be protecting your identity.
Right. If you can not rely on a central authority to say you are who you say you are.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Go ask daddy if this is actually who they say they are. No, you can crowdsource that.
Yeah.
And while we're still pretty close to what
the question was,
what actually Lisa asked something and reminded me, talking about, sleeping being measured, and there's it was Greg that said put something in your foot, and call it walk coin or whatever. There has been a lot of proof of walk, that kind of thing. And here's what happens. Here's the challenge that you're up against, right? So really what ends up happening is this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm just going to go to the gym with my phone, and I'll be able to participate on the network, and I'll be able to mine with this, move coin.
Right. You would have to be able to send
to measure
verified
exercise
sealed sneaker, and they would have to send it back, and then also sign a cryptographic proof. And you have to check that it wasn't tampered with on a multi-sig before.
Yeah, so there's challenges to all of that, but it can happen. It can work. Yeah. I just wanted to push that up before we drift.
Yeah, you would be able to use just GPS. You'll end up with in the worst case scenario, a whole bunch of really sad people finding Pokemon. In perverse fashion.
Totally true. Do you know the before the military turned off the error for the GPS, right? Mm-hmm. Way back when they first put it out, there was an error for.
They were worried about somebody else having.
I'm super familiar with that. We used that a lot with Tomahawk.
Yep, and the way around it back then, even as a kid, I read in Discover magazine as a kid that there was a way around it, because you can have waypoints. So if you have a beacon at a known waypoint, then you can triangulate yourself and remove all the error, right? So that's what other militaries would be doing, and essentially is, maybe one of the reasons that they turned off the error anyway. But you could do the same thing, although infrastructure would be high. But let's say you had sponsoring entities that would have beacons in their storefronts that, if you passed by and it saw your Bluetooth, your device on Bluetooth, or it did some other, I'm going to scan this ever-changing QR code on this screen at this store, and it's like, okay, Joe's really there, right? You can do things like that.
There was a coin like that, and it was like having Yelp, or it was trying to prevent from getting like bad Yelp or Amazon reviews.
Really?
Bravo.
Yeah,
That was it.
I have a Bravo account. I've reviewed stuff in my hometown and stuff.
I don't think they're active anymore. Are they?
I don't know. I still have the app. Let me turn it on.
I tried to get a hold of them because we were going to do something. I was going to try to get them to do something for a nonprofit, and I can't remember what it was now. It's been years ago, but I was like, this is already set up like this. But yeah, they had beacons, and in fact, Kenny Bozak wore a Bravo beacon to a conference. Was it Litecoin Summit, or I don't know, some crypto conference? And if you went up to him with your Bravo app, you could get your coins, scan him, or beep him, or whatever. But it was just that thought, Joe.
I hope they're still active and going. It's just still loading. I don't know, maybe not, but I'll check it out. And I'll get back with you on that.
I tried to reach out to them on social media, and
if it is not, I'm guessing they need to find some way to do it decentralized, because I'm guessing if it didn't work out, it was because their middlemen took too much of a cut.
Maybe, could be.
Oh,
I got some Bravo coins. I forgot about those. I got to go see.
There you go.
But that's mining, right? You're putting expertise, like maybe your expertise is IT, and so you know how to run mining equipment at home. Or maybe your expertise is food, and you know what makes a good restaurant. Bravo is an excellent example of like monetizing in a decentralized network, monetizing your particular expertise that maybe you do for free in a food blog on Facebook, but you could do it on Bravo, for example, and get rewarded based on other people validating that you're not just a troll and that kind of thing. Similar in concept to Den in a way.
Or like imagine a miner hooked to a truck axle, right? And you want to make sure that truck drivers take a break every once in a while. So you have the mine after enough hours on the road degrade the amount of yield you get from mining new blocks, right? You could actually, pay rewards for safe driving and reduce those rewards when they got dangerous. Like that sort of thing can actually work.
Cool. Very smart.
My friend's watching and said, dude, I love how you have so many coins you forgot you own. Because I try out, I'm hyper interested in everything. So, that's how I learn as I go do it. And I'm like, oh, this is neat. It works this way.
Dude, I need to check, actually. Everybody should always check their Etherscan or their Polygon scan or their BSC scan or whatever. Well, actually, be careful with BSC scan, but like you probably have tokens in there you don't know have value.
Yeah. So I
once found like $100.
All the spam tokens. What is the value of some of those that have gone out? It's crazy.
I think there's like some people who tried to skirt around SEC regs with it for a while. Like they're like, it will be decentralized totally, so they won't come after us.
You use somebody else's. I've thought about that too. Like, what if I go and get some like dead? I got a roll of shitcoin white paper, toilet paper on my shelf up here. What if I found an old dead coin that exists still, and I'm like, okay, we're going to use these. I'll just go buy 11 billion of them.
We have one of those actually.
It's pre-airdropped, right? So everyone who used to participate in that already has some. So you didn't do an airdrop; it's pre-airdropped, and you didn't mint it and create it. You just acquired it, like digging it up out of the ground, and now you use that. Would that be a way to operate a business in the United States? Do you have to jump
through classic? What? No.
Yeah, that's a secondary market. So
it
I think we'll know a lot more. Yeah, it depends when we know who the decision makers are. So Juicy J in World Blockchain Roundtable asks, how exactly does cloud mining work?
Right. So we talked about that a little bit at the top, I think. But basically, it is somebody in chat said, never trusted cloud mining, not your keys, not your crypto. Don't trust Amazon servers either. So there's a variety of things that would count as cloud mining. Some of it is, you trust them with your stuff, whether it's your hardware or your wallet or something. Some of it you keep your own keys and you just access their hash rate, like NiceHash, right? For example, you can download a piece of software on your, let's say you got a gaming computer, then you only play games, twice a month because you have no time anymore and you're not a kid that plays video games, but you used to be and you got spare hardware. Well, you can just install this NiceHash software. This is how it used to work. I don't know if it still works this way. And you can either sell your hash rate on your computer, or you can directly mine with it without a bunch of confusing setups and things like that. The other way that's what we didn't talk about is the invert model, where you can actually sell hash rate, spare hash rate on cloud for
like
other people.
Like a permissioned on purpose above board.
Yeah, it's like if you've ever heard of like SETI at home or folding at home, where you're helping the scientific community research how proteins fold and how they can become a certain shape so that they fit a certain puzzle piece that cures a certain disease or finds aliens or stuff like that, where you donate hash power. You got a little bit, you don't have much, but you got a screensaver and it's idle.
That has to be the strangest example of.
It's the same
if you've
thing.
Ever heard of that. Yeah.
There's
but
a
it's
really
popular.
cool actually.
SETI and folding at home are both used to be really popular, especially if you've ever worked in a government office or some kind of like office space kind of thing. I used to see folding and SETI wallpapers all the time because it's their power, their electricity. Nobody
Never heard of either
that.
one of those.
If you
wanna ask
guys
one
have
thing.
heard of Golem, have you guys heard of the Golem project?
Yeah.
They do something kind of neat with that, where like essentially you provide capacity to the network through their software, and because you're providing capacity, you get paid in a mining like fashion. So it's a lot like a cloud mining way to share capacity.
In fact, when I first saw this topic, I thought it was going to be related to the stuff that Dave does, which I can't remember all the projects, but where it's essentially a cloud environment that is decentralized in mining and not cloud mining, right? So
where you're incentivizing people to run software instead of doing proof of work type stuff.
Right. And it's we've thought about that for using it with Den, and that would be a great way to decentralize stuff. The other question I had though is about the what amounts to the efficiencies around cloud mining, and it's still an odd thing to me because, like, say back in the day, even unless you had a really good rig, you were generally better off buying Bitcoin than mining it because you couldn't, it's cheap enough, and it's an interesting thing for the economics, because essentially if people realize, oh, I could spend the energy or not make as much, or I could take the same amount of money and buy more, in which case the price would be increased, and therefore you get to some
because then
that's super important actually, Joe.
On paper, you're directly contributing to scarcity when you do that as well.
Right.
There's a really good, because like if you don't want to contribute to the network and help secure it, like you probably should be mining. Like if you're not actually interested in that network for the reason that network exists, rather than like hoarding the coin. Right. The coin should be like a thing that's, it enables you to do it if you want to keep doing it.
Right. So I don't know. I've just been interested in that for a while, and I used to always think of it. Well, I was still mining with a somewhat out of date Bitcoin rig, and I did pooled mining with, I think it was Slush, or it was one of the first ones, one of the that was set up for pooled, and then I ended up doing some stuff with CEX, where they had they almost had the 51% issue during that period of time. And it was always, and I was doing it because it was interesting, right? And of course, the Bitcoin that I mined back then was worth more later, but it's still, I would have been better off buying for the same amount of money I spent, but I didn't spend a ton, so it didn't really matter. It's not like I had a warehouse full of
with maybe the one exception being if you really, really want to get a hold of a coin and there's no exchange and no way to get it, maybe then mining is like the best answer to accumulate because sometimes, like early on in the days of Bitcoin, like I'd heard about it, but I didn't know where to buy it, and because of that, I missed out. So if you find a coin you want, and the only way to get it is, as far as you can tell, is to mine it, then that's probably a good reason to do it.
Yeah.
I am brought up a good point. I missed a couple. So you don't, it doesn't have to just be proof of work stuff that you're serving up. Like you have spare hardware and stuff, because there's storage and SIA where you can have extra hard drive space to store things. I know Odyssey has an opt-in. I don't think this is incentivized or monetized, but Odyssey will allow you to use some spare hard drive space for their network to serve up videos and stuff that people want to publish and push out. I like Flux a lot. And there's a newer one called Kudos that's a little bit less decentralized, but also has some interesting capabilities that they're pushing for. And that is where you can run a node that is literally like a replacement for what AWS and like Google Cloud offers, where you can get legitimately a VM. And it's just some rando's computer in the world, and it's duplicated like 5 times. So that in case, and well, not in case, but when one of them goes down, because we're decentralized now, we're not in a data center with a battery backup and a secondary power supply and our own, power plant just in case. So they make it to where it's designed to fail without failing, if that makes sense at all. So yeah, all kinds of extra resources that people have around, you should be able to monetize it, use it, offer it up for somebody who wants to use it without, funneling all the proceeds of that through a central company who's going to soak up all the value instead. So thanks for that. For
another really good reason to run a miner is for privacy coins too. I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, if you are into privacy coins at all and you want to get into that, like that's heroes work, because like you become a weak spot in what's often a trusted setup. Like for a long time, Edward Snowden was a secret trusted setup for Zcash with undisclosed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Until they got their untrusted setup stuff done, he was quiet about it. But like, if you run that stuff, you're helping people really keep their stuff private, which is really kind of like hero thing to do that you can just do today.
Yep. Yeah, miners in general doing heroes work. So
very exciting. So the next question is from Derox. His or I guess. Is it him? I can't see the emoji thing or the profile pic. But the question is it centralized or decentralized? If the cloud belongs to a corporation, how can mining or cloud mining, let's say, be decentralized?
Great question.
I love this question.
Because some cloud mining is less.
It could be both, right? Yeah.
There are ways, and I don't want to get into too much because I literally just talked to Austin about this the other day, that things connected to physical hardware that somebody else holds in a data center somewhere else can be structured such that even if they wanted to censor whoever the hell they're trying to censor, or if they wanted to confiscate whatever the hell they want to try to confiscate or turn it off, they would have to turn the whole thing off if they wanted to stop this relatively obscure way of allowing for marketplaces and independent connections between buyers and sellers of infrastructure to exist. I will say no more on that because I'm probably getting into stuff that you will want to hear about on Rivet once we get it more polished.
Okay.
I've got an idea too that relies on something that's not developed, so I don't want to give it away completely. But there are ways, along with what you said, there are ways to make cloud infrastructure far less centralized, because you do typically have that centralized, even physically, even if everybody has their own accounts and their own access to their own machines, but they're all co-located in the same facility. You're still centralizing the hash power, right? And so you could have it run by, if it's all one company or one corporation and they own everything, that's centralization, of course. It can be less centralized by letting people hold their own keys to access it. It can be further decentralized by maybe being a bring your own device, like co-location company. Still it's all in one spot. But it depends on how you design it. and there's a spectrum. The answer is yeah, it's more centralized, but it's one of the trade-offs to how easy they are to use. It's kind of like security, where there's always a trade-off between convenience and security.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the same as Bitcoin's massive hash power is largely a function of its re-centralization.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
People found a way to centralize a decentralized network. Not that it is centralized, but it is less centralized than it was meant to be.
It's probably a lot less centralized, less decentralized.
That's what I meant to say.
Than the monks would tell us, right?
Yep. Well, this is one of the reasons open source is so super important, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're not perfectly decentralized in the proper sense, if you're not a distributed network with no really key major nodes that are weak spots, then what you're going to need is the ability to federate. And if you want to do that in a way like when they took down the Dread Pirate Roberts, and we all learned he was Ross Ulbricht, and they sentenced him to an inordinate amount of jail time. There was a guy literally on trial the next week for running the same exact software who got off with a slap on the wrist because they didn't need to make an example twice. But he was using the same software, and they can't take down those dark markets because they're easy enough to spin up.
They're bigger
game of whack-a-mole.
than they were then, right? So
right.
So,
the key is to create a game of whack-a-mole that's too expensive for them to play.
Now, there are interesting things similarly to how can you guarantee some level of decentralization when all of the economic factors point to we have to put everything in a single warehouse in order to be efficient enough to be profitable mining, let's say Bitcoin. You could put things in the protocol that would, like what Distant often says, adds friction to it, where very similar to what traditional markets have done for timing on trades. Like I can't remember the details of it, but there was a system where it literally added loop so that signals could not come within a period of time, so they could guarantee that even at the speed of light, these trades can't beat this, in advance of other trades. You could do things like that, where part of the protocol itself would be to prove that you are desynced from the other nodes, that you're not in the same, and I'm not an expert at some of those things, but there are probably some interesting
It's actually a really
things.
old common problem in compute, right? Like dealing with race conditions. There's social race conditions, but there are race conditions.
Right.
I hadn't heard about that loop. That's interesting, because that did happen where people realized they can just dial in and make a trade, or they can actually locate closer to the building, or they can locate inside the building, or whatever, that kind of thing. Especially if it's an automated machine that makes its own decisions. Well, then you can take that and put it on the trading floor to where it's plugged right in. So it gets there way ahead of everybody else. It gets signals faster than everybody else. And that's an attack, in my opinion. That's cheating. It's allowed, but I don't know. I didn't know about the loop thing. So that's interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, the loop thing, though, ultimately creates an exploitable hole, though, right? Like maybe the fact that we don't have microsecond or down to the nanosecond trades happening is a good thing, right? When you think about the length of time it takes to process a transaction, maybe it's better that you have to do like a zero knowledge roll up and slap it all into something that could hypothetically be audited ongoing before you roll it up.
Right.
I'm not a fan of outside auditing, right? I'm not trying to make a case for it, but there are certain things that you want to be able to gate, but the gating just needs to be, especially when it comes to cloud mining and stuff like that. The gating needs to be fair, and so I think that's really the key centralization risk is fairness.
Yeah. And there's some interesting applications even for standard security problems like denial of service, to put a proof of work in requests and things like that. There's still some issues, but it's a really interesting tool that you can plug in, depending on what kind of infrastructure you have. But it's pretty neat.
Yeah, the centralization thing, like one of the reasons that I would consider using something that was more centralized for mining and stuff like that is because I live in a high electricity price area. So if it's more profitable for me to locate somewhere where power is cheaper, even after that company takes a cut, because that's how they operate. That's their whole business. If it's still more profitable for me, even after they take a cut, because they get 6 cents a kilowatt hour and I get 12.5 or 13, then that makes sense. You know,
and that dollar price difference that you pay is like enough to risk the possibility someone seizes it too. You know?
And by the way, that was always when the pooled stuff, that was one of the first things I thought, well, wait a minute, how do I avoid them control? And it's beautiful, because in the mining, it's just, you know, that you still control your keys. It just shows up in your wallet.
And even the pool itself, if you look into P2 pool, that's an excellent pool mining infrastructure that is not centralized.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Really neat. Really neat stuff.
I think that's how Theta mines, right? They use a G pool.
I'm not super familiar with Theta. I don't know.
Oh, that's a great project. You should look into it.
Cool.
Because they share broadband. Or it allows for sharing broadband. But
that's awesome.
They use a G pool for mining. I don't know. That's my very limited knowledge of that.
I've heard of this.
There's other stuff too, like Orchid VPN too, along the same lines, where it's just like a different service that you can access because it's mined separately. That's neat.
Interesting. Technology. What's next? I don't know.
Something with WebRTC.
I don't have a way to read the questions.
Oh, is it not? Let's see here.
It's time. It's time.
Oh, it is.
We have 4 minutes left. You could keep going, but you can get your bonus if you.
Oh, I can hit my bonus if I don't spend time with some of my favorite people in the whole world. Okay. Well, I guess we can knock it out.
Do we have any more questions?
Do we have any more questions? I don't think so, but I have no way of knowing. So,
Let's see.
What are we being presented? Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Well, what did I bring up? What did I wish on myself? Okay, topic. Can we highlight the paradigm shift needed to not only educate the layman on cloud mining, but its long-term importance with the integration of Web3 technology? For example, can we see how important AR and VR technology is going to be in the future market? People want games and business want profits, but realistically, people won't be able to cyber diver indefinitely. Sleep will still be necessary. Well, you can mine in your sleep. Remember, we talked about that, so it's okay. What happens when you go offline instead of your AVI disappearing until you log back on? You can successfully connect it with cloud mining software where your AVI enters into a lobby and performs a particular action or routine, becoming an NPC, performing in-game construction, working in a school, etc. Cloud mining has the possibility to allow users to continue to generate information for that game, and may even play a part in contributing to the overall processing of a particular county or region, as an example, of course. How realistic does this type of mechanism seem in the long run? What happens if a family member dies and instead of the account becoming dead, the family can just set that account to becoming a mining account in the cloud and become immortalized in the game, as an example? Let me know your thoughts on the idea.
I kind of love this. It took me a minute.
I don't know who wrote this, first of all.
Hyperion frequency.
Hyperion frequency. Hats off to you.
I like the idea.
Everybody's going to have a trained chatbot that's trained on their corpus, and it's going to be
so one of the concepts.
Yes, that's what I want.
They are doing that with AI. They're offering that as a service. If you want to go in and have AI learn a little bit of your personality and record some of you, and then your family members can go in and visit with your hologram after you die.
It has to be in a crystal form, though, right? At least for me, right? I can be Joelle and
you stylize yourself.
I want my avatar to be like a Futurama head in a jar.
I just think there needs to be, I don't know.
Yeah, a future where you just walk by, and like there's an urn on the mantle, fireplace mantle. And you just walk by and like Dad's head pops up. It's like, hey, what's up?
Oh,
that's
or
kind
like
of
the photos from Harry Potter, the paintings from Harry Potter. You can just be in a painting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Just like.
You know what the question reminds me of, though, is it reminds me of like Tesla's full self-driving future plans, where you go to work, you park your car, You go in to the office, and while you're working all day, your car is out being an Uber, driving people around, earning money from you, basically, working for you while you work.
Hopefully they have an automated
frequency kind
wash
of
out the bar hose
to gaming, right? So like, what if your gaming avatar, after you're done gaming, goes out and does
and is an NPC
as an NPC in the game, and now your NPCs are real, and that kind of thing. So that's kind of
any you guys tabletop gamers?
I'd like to be, but I haven't made time for it.
When I was a kid.
So when you leave the game, sometimes if you're in the right kind of game, you have like what is your character going to do while you're away type of prompt that you have to deal with right before you close. Right. So maybe you go to university, or maybe you go stay in a luxury hotel and booze it up. Right. It's going to cost you some gold.
Maybe you.
My son has a game, and he has to like put him to bed before because he's like, oh no, I have to put him to bed before I close out the game or whatever.
Yeah, there was one that I can't remember what it was called. I mean, it was pre-crypto, but it was where all of the characters, like when you built your character, you could write script and essentially have it continue to do things, and you essentially, it would sleep, but you would potentially have to. You would have animals and other things that would be kind of in your little army that would protect you when you weren't there, but it would all be scriptable, and that was part of it, I guess, that people could essentially come and try to kill you.
Or you could like in Star Wars Galaxies. If anyone ever played the first version of that, you could set your guy up as a shop, basically.
Where you
I remember the stuff you crafted.
Yeah, a friend of mine used to play that, and it was exactly what he would do. Is like, you're manning the shop while you're gone, or something like that.
And I do think with crypto, is like you have an NFT as your character. That does seem to be a proper way to do that. That it maybe your character is there in some capacity, and maybe there's some level that I don't know. That the weirdest part is if you're not there. How fair is it if somebody's attacking you when you're not there? I don't know how that works.
The way that this is what gets me about gamers, I guess, is if you watch or you read Ready Player One. This is a widely accepted, utopia for gamers. Like that would be fucking fantastic. Ready Player One world. Awesome. You can only do that with stuff like NFTs. You can only fairly do that reasonably. And it's interesting because in that game, in that fictional world, if your character dies, it dies. Like it's done. Right. And so there's actually somebody who's like really high level, or they've collected a lot of loot and they're carrying around all this cool gear. Like it's even more impressive because now you're in a permadeath world where you don't just respawn and get your old body back and your old loot back. It's like, no, it's gone. That kind of thing.
Right. Even a noob in a boot suit couldn't beat that guy. Right.
Yeah. But anyway, not to drag it out because we're at the end here, but I wanted to say to answer answer part of Hyperion Frequency's question about how do you get people, how do you train people, how do you teach people to participate in that kind of network? There's a cold start problem, where you gotta drum up interest. But I think part of that is teaching people that they already do a lot of voluntary work that they don't understand as being voluntary work. There's a lot of intellectual work and there's a lot of physical work that's done for free for companies that monetize it for themselves and take value from you. And that's their way of mining. Facebook mines its users for advertising dollars, that kind of thing. Yep. So if you can teach people that there's a different way or a better way to do that is more equitable to the worker, and this is going to be probably something that everybody's going to want to talk another hour about, but we can't. But I think that it's ridiculous that Marxists and communists are anti-blockchain and Bitcoin, because Web3, specifically Web3, is kind of that give the ownership of the thing, of the company, to the blue collar worker. Like they should be promoting that, so it's confusing to me to see people that maybe I don't agree with that ideology, but I don't understand why they are so opposed.
I think it's actually
something that could work in their interest if they applied it that way.
If
so
I may
don't know
venture, I guess it's
what the
probably
answer
because
is to teaching
the only thing
people.
they wouldn't be allowed to do would be to shut down all the ANCAPs over there in their other community. Like they wouldn't be able to go over there and socialize the ANCAPs. Like you just had to let the separate communities exist in parallel.
I don't know.
And sort of
I think it's
coexist.
about marketing too, just because it's associated with capital. It's an interesting thing, but maybe blockchain could reduce the separatisms or consolidate them, because it's all about transparency and making actions more equitable, which kind of dissolves some of the main reasons that you have some of the isms, because they're all assuming central government and therefore we need to do XYZ. If you don't need that anymore, you can do a lot more powerful things. And in the end, I think it's one of those things. In my opinion, if I were to start a religion, it would be to get everything on chain in the perfect world, so that everybody can actually go and see what really happened, right?
I'll close with two things on this, I guess. One is, there are people out there who want to play PvE cooperatively, and there are other people who want to do death matches in first-person shooter, and that's okay. So, if you're more collectivist, you can build that world, and it can be right alongside the people playing the deathmatch game over here. That's one versus all.
They don't call them death matches anymore, Greg. They're called battle royale now. And the walls.
Okay. Well, sorry, I grew up in the era of.
It's a death match. I know. It's called death match.
Yeah. Just trying to spice it up a little bit. Spice it up.
In any case, the other thing that I think is worth leaving behind about this is the people you have to convince right now aren't necessarily people who are going to be using 10, 15 years, right? You need to go out and find the developers who are going to build this. You need to go out and find the creatives who are going to create this. If you're here right now, I bet you're a creative. I bet you're a thinker. You're an idea person. You're a leader. You want to go find other lions. Don't try to wake the sheep up yet. They're not ready. We have to build some infrastructure first. We have to build some background for them. We have to make it easy for them to hop over the fence to the other side. That's the race against time that we're in, against the powers that would rather herd them towards their oblivion. So if you're awake and you're listening to this and that makes sense to you, congratulations. Now get to work, right? It's kind of the attitude.
Absolutely. Join the fight for freedom and build something and make it easier for others. I think that's a great way to wrap this up. So Greg, from there, let us know where we can find you and what's going on in your world.
Okay. Well, Rivet is where I call my home. So if you go to @Rivet with underscores between them, you'll find me. If you go to the one without underscores, it'll be a dead account, so you'll not have very much fun. And then Design Heretic on Twitter or any other social platform where good times are had. Den.Social is a place I've been hanging out a lot more lately, so you should see more posts from me coming in there. And I strongly urge you all to check that out. My whole thing is if you're listening to this and it makes sense to you, go build, because nobody else is going to do it if you don't.
I love it. That's great. Dave, Distant, let us know where we can find you and what's happening in your world.
So I'm at Distant, or just Distant on the internet. The middle T is a 7 though, because I'm such an elite speaking hacker. But yeah, look me up, Distant. Twitter, mostly Den.Social. Hopefully more Den.Social than Twitter going forward. I'm starting to abandon some of the cesspools out there. What I wanted to say, though, is big shout out to everyone in chat who mentioned that there was an issue with logging in to Den. Over the course of this show, it has been resolved. Some of it might be still getting figured out right now, but give it 5 or 10 minutes if you can't log in. But big shout out to the Den devs who don't get the notoriety of being the Den people. That's the real hero. And so try to log in again. We're back online, and it was awesome that I was able to get first called out at the beginning of the show by the community, and then get resolved by the end of the show, which is
those F1 pit crew levels.
Make sure that you share this show and that you're contributing by commenting and replying below the chat, so that we all contribute together. Joe, tell us what's going on with Dragon Chain and where we can find you and follow you.
Lots of exciting things. A few good projects popping up and getting underway, which we'll hopefully be able to share more about soon. And follow me on Twitter at Jojo Rowe, Den as just Joe, and everywhere else. It's normal stuff. So.
Just normal stuff.
Yeah.
Just saving the world one dragon at a time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am Lisa Mighty Davis. You can find me on Twitter at Lisa Mighty Davis, also known at Litecoin Lisa on YouTube, over at Den.Social at Lisa Mighty Davis, and I will be launching my lair over there tomorrow with the help of Distant up here.
Nice.
So super excited about that. So you guys join us over there when we get that launched. We'll be playing around this weekend on that. So thanks for joining us here on World Blockchain Roundtable.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. A doctrinal approach is palpable if this animal is fallible, but that conclusion is laughable. So with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.